Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome to Rock Video Rental. I am Brandon, and with me, as always, is Caleb. And we are going to be continuing on with Sports Timber. We're going to be talking about Gridiron Gang. But before we get to that, we're going to do like we always do. And Caleb, what have you been watching?
Not a whole lot.
All right,
Um, yeah, that's usually how it goes.
moving on.
The sports stuff, I mean, which is appropriate for this month and whatnot. So yay. But I might have some thoughts and everything to share with a recent video game that just came out.
Hmm?
I have not started playing it, but I bought it today because it has just piqued my curiosity. And even though it's mostly a multiplayer game, I just caved because I don't know anyone else getting it. But have you heard about the Warhammer Space Marine 2 game?
No.
Okay, yeah. So are you familiar with what Warhammer is?
Yes.
Okay. So yeah, they made a Space Marine game. I don't know how many years ago it was, but they just made a new one that released 2 days ago, 3 days ago,
Rock.
something like that. And I've been seeing stuff about it, seeing people like play it, and it just looks also a lot of them are comparing it to the games that the awesome multiplayer games that came out for like the Xbox 360.
Okay.
And so it's kind of one of those things where people are saying they just don't make games like this anymore. So I don't know, I've heard too much about it, and so now I need to check it out myself. Probably, honestly, after we're done recording, I'm gonna start playing it because it just got done downloading on my PlayStation.
Rock.
So 1 a.m. gaming.
Oh, yeah. The life of a dad.
Yep.
Anything else?
Oh no, you know me, that's it.
Yeah, football.
Bow.
I also watched football. I watched Michigan get destroyed.
We
I
don't talk
watched
about
Notre
that.
Dame lose. That was funny.
That was actually pretty hilarious.
I watched some of that Boise State Oregon game. You and I were texting each other about it.
Hmm.
Um, and I watched the Lions beat the Rams.
That
That
was
was
awesome.
fun.
Yeah.
And I've been watching Family Matters. Like my daughter's super into it.
That's
She
funny.
thinks Urkel is like the funniest person that has ever lived. Like she sits there and laughs the entire time he's on TV. And then like she came home from school the other day and I'm like, hey, she says, hi, can we watch Urkel? Like the first thing he says. I'm like, yeah, we can watch Urkel. But other than Family Matters, I watched a couple horror movies preparing for reviews on the blog that's going to be on our website. I watched this movie from the Netherlands called The Lift, and it's about this elevator that like keeps malfunctioning and killing people. And it sounds really corny, but it was really well made.
That's funny.
I
It's just
enjoyed
like,
it. It was good. The acting was good. The gore and stuff was good.
can I ask you, like, how many people died? Like, why do you keep using it if it's broken and it's killing people? Like,
Okay, so like the first group of people didn't die. The elevator got stuck and the air conditioning turned off in it, so it was like super hot and they all passed out and had to be taken to the hospital because of heat stroke. So then they have like this the main character, he comes in, he's like an elevator repairman and he's like
oh
checking everything
gosh.
out and he's like this elevator's like brand new, there's nothing wrong with it kind of thing. And then like a night watchman accidentally like the elevator shaft opens up and he like pops his head in to look. Oh, first a blind man falls down there. Like he thinks that the elevator is just open. The door's open and he walks in, but there's like the elevator's not there. The shaft is opened.
Oh gosh.
So he like fell to his death. And then like this night watchman, the door's open and he looks down and sees that guy's dead body, but then the door's like shut on his head.
Oh my
And the
gosh.
elevator comes down and like lops his head off.
Oh gosh.
So there's a good like probably five people that die in that elevator.
Because yeah, I was just kind of thinking to myself. First of all, it's hilarious that the main character is the repairman because like they'll
Yes.
they'll make anyone a main character. But I was also like, at what point are you just kind of like, okay, nobody use the elevator because people keep dying?
Yeah. Now, the movie's from 1983. Hugh Stapel It was the a staple, something like that. He's the main character. Uh, and the director is Dick Maas. And those two guys worked together on the movie Amsterdam that I've talked about before.
Oh yeah.
The movie that's kind of like a giallo, mixed with the slasher, mixed with an action movie, which I think I have it on the schedule sometime too, because I think you'll actually really enjoy that movie because the action scenes and chases and stuff are really good. But I don't, the director's got like a certain style to him
Okay.
that I don't know. Is just his movies like they might seem absurd. Like 'cause the idea of a killer elevator is absurd, but it just seems to work within the movie. I don't know how to explain it. It's like really stylistic and everything too, and the acting's pretty solid. But so I enjoyed that one. And then I watched the classic Faces of Death. Was like this 1978 documentary that was supposed to have um it was all played to be like a real documentary with people dying, and it's like this starts off with this doctor talking about how he studied death and like the different ways that people die and things that happen and stuff like that. And there's like it's like a lot of slaughterhouse stuff where they show them like slaughtering animals, and it's really unnerving. And then they show this other stuff that's like somebody did it with special effects. Some of it like is not real at all.
Okay.
So you got things thrown in like that, but they're, presented as real. And then they're mixed in with like um car accident scenes and like
Hmm.
aftermath. And there's like one that they show that's really graphic and it's real and it's I don't know, it was just gross. Like I don't think anybody should ever really watch that movie. I was like, well, that was a one-time watch. And then my friend Jack told me that he thought it was a no-time watch. He's like, I watched it back in the 90s, and he's like, I never even thought about it again because it was so gross.
That's funny.
But yeah, other than that, I've watched Cinemassacre Monster Madness because I watch it every single year around this time. But that is pretty much it. So I guess we might as well talk about Gridiron Gang, a movie that is kind of forgotten in the mid 2000s. But yeah, let's just jump right in. Gridiron Gang is from 2006 and is directed by Phil Jono. I'm guessing that's how you say that name. The plot is teenagers at a juvenile detention center under the leadership of their counselor gain self-esteem by playing football together. The cast, we got Dwayne The Rock Johnson as Sean Porter, Exhibit as Malcolm Moore, Jade Scott York as Willie Weathers, David V. Thomas as Kelvin Owens, Setu Tase as Junior, I'm guessing that's how you say that name, and Kevin Dunn as Ted Dexter. There's quite a few other characters in this, but those are the main ones. Have you ever seen this movie before?
No, I had not. I actually started the wrong movie because there's another one, right?
Is there really?
Yeah, I think it's like in the 90s.
Was it the documentary one?
I think so.
Yeah, that's this movie is based off that.
Okay, that's kind of why I figured. Um, because I started it and I was like, wait a minute, this is not right.
You're like, wasn't The Rock supposed to be in this?
What is going on?
I'll just keep waiting for him to show up.
Ugh.
I think I've probably maybe seen this 5 times. I remember watching it soon after it came out on DVD.
Okay.
But I always liked The Rock and everything, so I was always a big fan of his. So when it came out, I had to see it.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, just one that doesn't really get talked about too much, I feel like.
No, definitely not. I mean, this was early in his acting career, right?
Yeah, it's fairly early. Well, his first movie was The Mummy Returns,
Oh gosh.
and then after that, he did The Scorpion King.
Poor guy.
Yeah. Then he had things like The Rundown, which is pretty good.
Yeah.
And
that was a good one.
yeah, this is one of his early ones too. But yeah, actually I thought he was pretty good in it. I thought this is one of his better acting jobs.
Yeah. No, I was pleased with the movie. Sorry, I was looking at his early filmography, so I wasn't sure what else there was, but yeah, no, it was I mean, I kind of knew what the concept was about going in and everything.
Mhm.
So, it's I don't know how to say it without making it sound bad. Like it's not anything like super special.
No.
But it's a good sports movie. I mean, that's honestly, if we're being honest with ourselves, like that's what most sports movies are. Like they're just a good sports movie. Um, not a lot of sports movies are competing for like Oscar nominations or
Right.
anything like that. So
Yeah, like it's not Remember the Titans. And
yeah.
it's not The Game Stands Tall, which is a very forgettable football movie.
Well, I mean, like I'm trying to even think. I mean, we of course we did Rudy. So Rudy is one of the most well-known
Yeah.
sports movies, but like outside of that, then I mean, you've got oh, what's that stupid? There's Field of Dreams,
Hmm.
which is like is a sports movie, but also at the same time, it's not. Um, I don't really care for the movie a whole lot myself. Whatever.
Jerry Maguire.
Jerry Maguire is a big one. Why can I not think of? Isn't it another Kevin Costner movie where he's a pitcher?
Oh, Bull Durham.
Yeah, I feel like that's a big one. Of course, you've got plenty of boxing movies because it's a lot of those underdog stories. What was it? Not Glory. Miracle.
Miracle, yeah.
Miracle was a recent big one too. So, but again, like I said, like you'll have those big ones, but I mean, gosh, I think naming all of those outside of Field of Dreams was any. I don't know if any of were nominated for any Oscars. So it's a lot of just that like sports nostalgia, um, feel good underdog story kind of a thing, you know,
Hmm.
in a lot of them. And this was another solid one. So like just kind of explaining that because I don't know. I mean, we might have people who listen who don't really get into sports movies that much, but that's why I feel like a lot of the sports genre is where you don't really get a lot of unique sports movies or spectacular sports movies. A lot of them are kind of like in the same vein of uh storytelling and so, this one of course is more unique than most. It's about the juvenile detention kids and everything, but just in general, if that makes
Yeah, but
sense.
in the grand scheme of things, it doesn't really bring anything new to the table.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
It's, I think a lot of the reason it doesn't get mentioned very much because it's not like a really good movie, but it's also not bad.
Mm-hmm.
It's just, it's kind of mediocre, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. It's an entertaining movie for sure.
Yes.
Um, and they took some time to build characters and things like that. And like I said, it's one of the Rock's best acting jobs. And I thought Exhibit was pretty good in it
Yeah.
for the little bit he had, but I was trying to think of any other movies he was in, and the only thing I could think of was Pimp My Ride. Remember that?
Yeah.
Uh,
Actually, now you've got my curiosity. I am kind of curious what other movies he
I'm
had to have
sure
been
he,
in some kind of action thing or something. Every rapper was
yeah.
in one.
I'm surprised he never showed up in like Fast and the Furious or something with
Yeah.
Ludacris and all those guys. Ja Rule. Oh man.
Okay.
Another positive thing with this movie is there's lots of football in it.
Mm-hmm.
You get a fair amount, and it's like kind of right from the get go.
Yeah, filmed pretty well too.
Yeah,
So, oh, dude, but I will say, like, right from the get-go, dude, how this movie started off intense, like, right away.
yeah.
Because I mean, I knew it was about juvenile and everything, but then it like totally went into like gang violence and all that stuff right away. And I was like, okay, with was not realizing it was going to be, because what is this rated? It's got to be,
I would think
uh,
it's probably rated R.
yeah, I was going to say, I believe it's rated R.
Yeah, that's my guess. Taking a look here. Um, it's PG-13,
Wow.
so I can kind of see that. I mean, there's gunshots and stuff in it,
I thought the
but
language was pretty over the top a few times that would have tipped into the rated R, but okay.
yeah. Well, who knows? It's 2006.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, for things we usually talk about things that are great, and I said like nothing's really great, and that kind of goes with what we were saying, how it's not an amazing movie, but it's not a bad movie, so it's kind of just middle of the road. And I feel like
Yeah.
there's a decent amount in this movie that's good, but there's really nothing that's great. And maybe
Like,
that's the problem that it has.
so if it, since we do a scale of 1 to 5,
Mhm.
like if you were saying great is 5 and bad is 1, like I don't think anything touches in those areas. And so everything's at like 2, 3, or 2, 3, or 4.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it is kind of interesting about that.
Yeah. And what it, really the my biggest beef with it is it's kind of long.
Yeah,
It's a longer movie. Like it didn't need to be over 2 hours long.
no, it did not. I was kind of surprised when I saw how long it was because I was kind of like trying to plan it out on when I was going to watch it. And then I was just like,
Yeah.
well, I'm not going to finish it tonight, but
Yeah. The other things I got are kind of a little nitpicky, and we'll kind of get into that as we go. But the movie kind of centers around the Willie Weathers character. He's
hmm
basically like the main kid. He's the one at the beginning that's part of the drive-by. He like escapes and his friend gets killed. Um, he ends up going to this juvie where like The Rock is the counselor. I couldn't figure out like what his job was at first until I read the plot. And I'm like, oh, I guess he is a kind of a counselor. Um, he has the idea of assembling a football team to like help the kids learn how to work together, and like got kids in rival gangs in there. Like Willie's beefing with this one kid named Kelvin who are like in rival gangs.
yeah,
Uh yeah.
I
Well,
could
yeah, Willie gets
imagine.
put in because he's a guy that's dating his mom and beating her.
Yeah.
Yeah. I forgot to mention that part.
hmm
But and that was pretty graphic too. I'm surprised that got past PG-13.
Yeah.
uh
Well, that, and then the kid that his friend who got hit by a car,
mhm.
like
That was pretty brutal.
they showed that.
Yeah. Gets like pinned up against a fence and pushed through it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was
So,
pretty brutal. Uh yeah, so they like, have all this practice and everything, and then like, oh, we got the one big kid who's angry all the time, and The Rock's like, oh, I don't know if we can trust you because you're always in trouble. And then he ends up getting hurt, of course, so you don't get to see the big guy play.
yeah.
And like he's a beast, like he's fast, he can run people over and stuff.
Yeah.
Uh,
Probably one of the guys most built to be a football player on the whole team.
yeah, and then you got Willie, who's like this tall, skinny kid,
hmm
but he's super fast. And they played their first game and they get completely throttled by like this rich school because when the Rock and Exhibit went around trying to get people to play him, and they're like, "Oh, we don't want anything to do with that with your students that are all delinquents. We don't think that would be safe for our kids or something like that." And yeah, they basically talked this one rich school into doing it, and they get destroyed in their first game.
Well, yeah, that I was a little bit confused on too, because like that, and of course I know it might not be completely accurate, but I wasn't sure exactly how it went because they talked to a few coaches, they said no, and then they talked to this one coach who was like a Christian school coach,
Yeah.
and then they show him making some phone calls, and he's like, "Hey, I got you scheduled for a full season of games."
Hmm.
It's just like, so were they like in a Christian school league or
Right?
yeah.
Christian and prep school or something.
Yeah. So it was kind of interesting. I mean, not important at all, but I was wondering.
Yeah, it's kind of interesting to think about. Uh, oh, and there's this guy in that Barrington team. That linebacker number 55, he's a total douche.
A
Keeps
douche
calling
canoe.
keeps calling Willie Boy the whole time and just blowing him up on every play. And basically, The Rock tells him he's a pansy and needs to learn how to run someone over.
Yeah.
uh, they say like he's afraid to get hit and everything, so they have like a practice, and The Rock puts on pads and everything and tells him like he can't stop until he runs him over,
hmm
like in the Oklahoma drill.
Yeah.
And then finally he does. I had that number 88, the white boy receiver, as a complete liability on the field. Can't catch, can't cover.
He's like, oh no, Ryan Gosling and
Yeah, yeah, Sunshine.
yeah. Well, no, not
No,
Sunshine.
Sunshine was a quarterback.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Sunshine was the
Ryan
quarterback.
Gosling. Yeah,
Because what's
uh,
his oh man, I can't even think of the guy's name that took his place,
yeah, I
but
can't.
the guy from
Yeah.
Scrubs.
Oh yeah. Donald Faison.
Yeah.
Um, yeah. He's drops everything, can't cover anybody. And I was like, why you keep throwing this kid out there? Like you gotta have someone else. It cracked me up too, where it's like the quarterback has never thrown a pass in a game.
hmm
He's like, "Oh, they want me to pass it?" And he's like terrified. And they're like, "Dude, you've thrown a pass before, haven't you?" He's like, "Well, I've thrown lots of passes in games on Madden."
Yeah.
He's like, "I control the quarterback," and they're like, "Oh my God." Uh, that just cracks me up. Um, and then they lose like a second game, but then they have their third one and they win.
Well, they barely lost the second one.
Yeah,
Wasn't it? It was like 7 or 10 points or something, maybe.
yeah. They start the first one they get blown out. The second one's a close loss, and then the third one they win. And
hmm
then during this time too, we get to see like the Rock's mom is dying slowly, and the team like bands together and they get her flowers and sign a card for her. And then soon after that, she dies. Um, and they like say they're gonna dedicate like the game to his mom, and they win the game. And then like this gangster guy shows up like to see Willie, and of course he's got beef with Calvin because they're rival gangs or whatever.
Yeah.
They have another game they win, and the gangster guy shows up at the game, and then he bumps into Calvin. They're like jawing at each other, and he shoots him.
Yeah. Which is
Yeah, that
totally
I always
insane.
forget about that. And then the cops show up, and they like unload on the gangster guy. He gets blown up. Um, and then of course Calvin's out for like the rest of the season. Like he was like in critical condition, and then he comes back around. But they make it to the playoffs, and they have to play the rich Christian school again in
hmm
number 55. And number 55 calls Willie the N-word.
Yeah. That was
Yeah.
cliche.
Yeah, for sure. They were just like building up to that. Well, first he started calling him boy. You got to build up to it. And then, of course, calling back from what happened before, like Willie runs him over. Uh, and then the
Gotta
white
have
boy
that
makes a
moment.
big catch. Number 88, the liability, makes a big catch. And then, like, all of a sudden, Junior decides he can play.
Yeah.
He was out, he got hurt, and he was out for like the entire season. He's on the sideline at the beginning of the game, like in a polo shirt, like helping the towel manager. And then all of a sudden he comes into the game.
Pretty sure that would not have been allowed.
Yeah. And then Junior like is basically just a lead blocker for Willie. Junior takes out two guys by himself. And then Willie scores for the win. And then um number 55 is just racist again.
And of course, they
Yeah.
have that epic moment where Willie has to like get past number 55 for the win and,
hmm
make a big deal out of it. And the climax of the movie.
Yeah. Yeah. And how about the narration at the end where it's just like, oh yeah, by the way, they lost the next game.
Yeah.
And then they
I
show like
I
the
thought they were
real,
winners.
right? And then they show like the real story, part of the movie that you watched. And they show Sean Porter, the guy with the rock played, and he's a white dude with a mullet and a mustache.
Hmm.
Like, well, so instead they got a half black, half Samoan guy who has a bald head play him. But I guess he had short hair in this one. He was still hanging on to his hair at the time.
Hmm.
Yeah. So some nitpicky things I had. So Leon was the quarterback, right? The dude's throwing motion is atrocious.
Oh my word, yeah.
Horrible. Like there's no way he's throwing passes like that and like completing them.
I think I saw a clip or something. Somebody did a video and they talked about that, about how they get people to be athletes in movies and they're horrible.
Yeah.
And they just like don't care. They
Hmm.
don't like try to train them with proper mechanics and everything. Like a lot of the teen movies when
Yeah.
we were growing up and everything, I saw a few clips of those and I was like, "Oh my gosh, you just never pay attention."
Yeah, the one of Freddie Prinze Jr. where he's a pitcher is one of those, and he's like,
Yeah.
Freddie Prinze Jr. cannot throw a baseball very well. And they like clip, they cut around it, and there's a whole bunch of transitions and everything to try to like cover up for it. There's one too where Brendan Fraser's like a pitcher, but he can throw because Brendan Fraser's kind of an athlete. There's a
Hmm.
football movie he's in too called School Ties, and you could tell that like Brendan Fraser's athletic and probably played football at one point because he
Yeah.
plays a quarterback and he can actually throw it. The guy that played Leon in this, however, cannot. uh, well, it's obvious too in like movies like Remember the Titans, where they had Sunshine as a quarterback, and he's an actual college football quarterback.
Hmm.
That was believable, but yeah, some of them are just really bad.
Keanu Reeves didn't do too bad.
No, no. Well, Keanu's kind of athletic too.
Yeah, and he's one of
But
those guys who commits to it.
yeah, and
Uh,
Adam Sandler's another one too. Like a lot of people don't know that Adam Sandler's actually a pretty decent basketball player.
mm,
Have you heard about that?
yeah, I have her.
Yeah.
Shaq, I think, talked about it, didn't he?
Yeah.
About saying like um, the one celebrity that could actually play basketball, maybe not play basketball in the NBA, but like could compete if you
Yeah.
play with him, it would be Adam Sandler.
Hmm. Uh, but yeah, Leon's not winning the Heisman, I can tell you that.
He ain't
uh,
getting no office.
no. Oh man. Anything else that you've got? Because there's not very much trivia and facts for this movie.
Yeah. Not much. I mean, it's kind of a weird one because I feel like there's not a lot to say about this movie
Yeah.
because it is just, oh, this is gonna make us sound bad, but it's kind of, as we were talking about at the beginning about some other stuff, it's kind of forgettable.
Hmm.
It's not gonna resonate. It's not really gonna be one where you're gonna be like, oh man, you remember that movie? Uh, growing up, and yeah, it just, if you're a rock fan, I could, yeah, totally see you probably watching this multiple times like you have and everything. But if you're not a rock fan, I don't really know much of another reason that would bring you back to this movie.
Yeah.
Like,
It's definitely a popcorn movie.
yeah.
It's a movie you can just sit down, you can watch it and enjoy yourself, but you're never gonna feel like this urge to watch Gridiron Gang again.
Hmm.
Maybe just every once in a while you might be going through Netflix and it shows up on there like, oh yeah, I forgot about that movie, and then you're going back and watch it again.
Yep.
But another movie that's kind of similar to that, we are talking about Keanu, is Hardball. We're like,
Okay.
Hardball was a pretty good movie, but no one ever really talks about that one. And it came out around the same time.
Hmm.
But I would say Hardball's better than this, but Yeah, it's definitely in the kind of forgotten sports movies. But oh, I had one quote that made me laugh is right after The Rock gets ran over by Willie, an exhibit walks over to him. He's like, "You know you're an idiot, right?" And The Rock says, "Well, I'm making progress because I used to be an asshole."
Yeah,
I
I
thought
thought
that was pretty funny.
that was one of the best lines in the movie.
That wouldn't surprise me if that was just like off the cuff for both those guys. Because
Yeah.
Exhibit's a pretty funny guy too, but
Mm.
I could see them doing that back and forth just off the cuff. But I guess I get into some of my trivia here. I really don't have too much. So sadly, after 20 years at Camp Kilpatrick, the stellar football program that was featured in the movie was sidelined in 2014, pending the outcome of a study on the long-term benefits thereof, despite helping to send multiple former Mustang players to the college.
Mm.
So it was based on a true story of a juvenile detention center football team that made it to the state championship. The team was followed by a film crew, and the footage became a TV documentary in 1993. After it aired on TV, the creators were swamped with big studio offers to make it into a feature film, but for various reasons, it took over 12 years to make it to the big screen as a feature.
Mm.
One of the players on Barrington had the last name of Plank. Kevin Plank is the founder and CEO of Under Armour, and all the team's uniforms in this movie were sponsored by Under Armour.
Okay. I actually had that down, a little note about that where I was just like, what the heck? They don't even just get uniforms, they get Under Armour stuff. Like their
Right?
polos were Under Armour. I was just like, no freaking way, man. I do
Yeah,
have to say on that note though, I don't know if it's legit how it went down, but the way that The Rock played the system for that,
yeah.
where he was just like the guy came and gave him crap on being like, you don't have the authority to spend this kind of money. And he's just like, oh, well, dang it, go ahead and fill out your paperwork and then you'll call a hearing and then I'll wind up having a family emergency. We'll have to reschedule the hearing and then we'll do the hearing and then by the time they'll deliberate and then by the time they figure it out, the season will be over.
It was pretty funny. I
Yeah.
forgot about that part. Uh, I noticed too that one of the teams they played, I think it was that Barrington team, they had the exact same jerseys that the Orlando Rage had in the XFL.
Okay. I
They're
wouldn't
like
I
really,
wouldn't
really
even know what that
similar.
looks like. Yeah.
They were like really, really similar because I was like, God, those look familiar. But they just had like different numbers on them. Like the stripes on the shoulders and everything were the same. But I don't know why I picked up on it. But so Sylvester Stallone was at one point interested in playing Coach Porter,
Okay.
which would have been interesting, and he would have looked more like the real Coach Porter. In the scene where Coach Porter and Coach Malcolm are meeting with the athletic board to determine if the Mustangs should be allowed to continue playing, follow the shooting at the previous game. The real Coach Porter and Coach Moore can be seen sitting at the table as well.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So Nicolas Cage and Bruce Willis expressed interest in playing Sean Porter before the role went to The Rock.
Hmm.
I can imagine either one of those guys really playing that role.
Yeah.
Maybe Bruce Willis, but I feel like Nicolas Cage would have been a little too over the top.
Yeah. It's interesting because I almost kind of felt like this was a movie that The Rock wanted it to make,
Yeah,
and then he like basically made it happen. So the fact that they were looking at other people is kind of interesting.
right. And The Rock was so popular at that time too that it was probably a better idea to have him, especially instead of Stallone, because at the time, like in the mid 2000s, Stallone's star kind of um dwindled a little bit. I mean, he came back, but
Mm.
like his movies at the time, like Get Carter and all those, like they didn't do very well. But Last thing I got is this movie made or was cost $30 million and it only made 41 in a box office. So
Rock.
I mean it's um budget back and just a little bit more. So again, kind of forgotten.
Yeah.
Grades. IMDb, Rotten Tomatoes, what do you think they are?
I may have seen IMDb. Was it 7.1?
It is a 7.1. I'm kind of surprised at that.
I am as well. I would have guessed somewhere in the lows, like 6 to 6.5.
Yeah, I was gonna say 6.5.
So, Rotten Tomato critic 69.
43.
Oh, ooh, whoa.
Yeah.
Um, okay, audience 65.
81.
Oh my gosh, what a huge jump.
That's a huge difference. That might be one of the biggest differences we've ever had.
Yeah, we might have to look at that sometime at
Uh,
the biggest differences in the movies.
yeah. I guess I'll go first this time. I think you went first last time.
I think you're right.
Um, Pretty much what we've been saying. It's not an amazing movie. It doesn't really do anything that other movies haven't done before. But it's not bad. It's a good entertaining movie. It has lots of football in it. It's got some things that some gang stuff that you might see in things like Boys in the Hood, which is also a movie I enjoy. So it's a nice mixture of that. It has The Rock at a really interesting time in his career, and one of his best performances. It has Exhibit, who like, what does Exhibit even do anymore? Like, is he just like retired? Because he doesn't really like host anything anymore.
Hmm.
Like he went from being like a famous rapper to doing Pimp My Ride to doing this, and then it's just like dude's probably just sitting on top of money, like chilling. But yeah, it's got some decent things going for it. It's shot pretty well. Some of the football action's pretty decent. Um, and then you get Leon's terrible throwing motion, but it's not a perfect movie, so I couldn't give it a perfect score. But I do enjoy it every time I watch it. I ended up giving it a 4 out of 5.
Rock. Well,
Dwayne
real
the Rock.
real quick before I give my reaction to everything, a couple quick big gaps between critic score and audience score. There was a movie that we did where the critics gave it a 27 and the audience gave it a 72.
Okay.
Hope floats. But another big one was
Crap floats sometimes too.
38% critic and 79% for audience,
Okay.
and that was Rocky 4.
Oh man.
Yeah,
Well, we know Rocky 4 is 100% in our books.
I know. 101. All right. Anyways, okay.
Uh,
So you gave it a 4 out of 5. I basically kind of echoing everything that you said, where it's like it's a good movie, but it's not a great movie, but it's also not a bad movie.
right.
So kind of in the simplest form, saying, everything's kind of hovering at 2, 3, 4 rating and everything. Uh I don't, it's not super memorable. It's not one that would be like, oh, hey, you should watch this. Now, if somebody said, hey, I'm really into football movies, I'd be like, oh, did you see the Gridiron Gang? That's a pretty decent movie. So in the
Yeah.
grand scheme of things, I'm kind of a little bit more towards the middle of the road. Not a ton, because once you kind of hit 3 and start going below that, you're really kind of hitting in the bad area.
Hmm.
So I gave it a 3.5 out of 5.
Rock. I would say that's pretty fair. I was kind of like borderline between 3.5 and a 4.
Rock.
Yeah. We are going to be continuing on with Sports Timber. Next week we're going to be talking about D3 The Mighty Ducks. We've done the other two, so we might as well finish out the trilogy. It's not the strongest in the trilogy, I'll say that, but we'll talk about it more next week. If you guys are liking the show, please subscribe and share. You can follow us on social media. We're on pretty much every platform. Check out YouTube and TikTok. I've been putting like all the previous October marathons on September because I know more people want to listen to horror stuff around this time. So go and check that out. And yeah, check out our website. We're at rockvideorental.com. Some cool stuff on there. So go ahead and check it out. And until then, as always, be kind and rewind.